Your podcast starts in 3, 2, 1.
Oh.
Good morning, Doctor. Time to wake up.
Well, thank you, Ivan. It's going to be a great day at the Mental Health Day podcast. I'm Todd Finnerty. I'm a clinical psychologist, and welcome to the show that celebrates National Take a Mental Health Day every day. You can learn more about that at www.mentalhealthday.org. This is podcast number 17, and it is, I think, one of my new favorite episodes of the Mental Health Day podcast. It is with my friend Dr. Ryan Niemiec, who does lots of great stuff. He's at the VIA Institute, into positive psychology and focusing more on our strengths rather than on our weaknesses or what's wrong with us, and maybe how we can take those strengths and build on them. He's got a bunch of new books coming out. A lot of them focused on positive psychology, also character strengths and mindfulness. And we talk about mindfulness a little bit in this one too. And I think with all the DSM-5 talk going on right now, I think talking about strengths, kind of what's right with us and how we can build on that, I think it's a great perspective to look at. So I'll shut up. So that my strength is not necessarily in these intros. One thing I will mention too is you can take a free strengths survey on their website, on the VIA Institute's website, and there's a link to that at mentalhealthday.org, and we also talk about it in the interview. And you get to see, I think I divulge some of my. You find out which strengths are some of your better strengths, or some of your more preferred strengths. I forget the term already, but you get to learn some of mine, and I think I would recommend you go ahead and take the survey yourself. It's free. You can get the basic results for free online. So let's go ahead and listen to the interview with Dr. Ryan Niemiec.
Hello, this is Ryan.
Hey, Ryan, it's Todd. How are you?
Hey there, Todd. How you doing?
Not too bad. Is now a good time?
It is, yeah. Yeah, definitely a good time, yeah.
Well,
so how have you been?
Not too bad. Not too bad.
Yeah?
How are things
All's going well? And the podcast that you've been doing a number of these are going good?
Yeah, it seemed to be.
Yeah.
Yours will probably take off like wildfire, though. I would.
Oh, of course. It has to be. I mean, I'm the most prominent person possible, right? No,
well,
but
it should be, though. It should be.
It should be. I mean, and we'll, I'll be happy to kind of promote it and stuff when you send me the link and things. And so, and I do a lot of social media, so I do, whether it's LinkedIn or Twitter, and I have a couple blogs like on Psych Today and Psych Central, and
I've
so.
seen them. Yeah.
Might be able to, and actually we could even put it into some of we have like marketing emails where we give people a little tidbit and then try to tell people about like one of our reports or a course or something, and maybe so sometimes in that little research tidbit or something we could maybe say, by the way, listen to Niemiec live on this or something. So. But you got to be a good interviewer. If it's not a good interview, then we're done. We're toast.
Yeah,
it's all up to you. You've been practicing.
My philosophy is just to stand back and let you do the work.
Good one, yeah. Good. How many have you done now?
I think. Don't quote me. I think this is 17.
Wow, jeez, that's good.
Since January, so.
That's great.
Yeah.
And the idea, it remind me again of like the kind of the purpose and idea behind it all.
I'm Ohio's public education coordinator for APA, and so and part of that is trying to work with the media, and part of it's kind of doing health fairs and things, and other parts are just trying to do whatever you can to help educate the public about psychology and mental health, those kinds of things. So, I'm trying to, use any of my special skill sets I can to kind of do some of that. And this is something that interested me. I had a podcast a few years ago, but it didn't last too long. So I figured I'd try and start a new one, try again. But
That's great. And is that something that exists like just permanently on the internet, or?
Yeah, it's not live or anything right now. I did start recording, so we're chatting now. But it's on iTunes. It's hosted on a server that I have. It's at mentalhealthday.org, and it's also
Great.
on. I also use Libsyn, which is a specialty podcast hosting thing that works better with iTunes. Liberated syndication, something like that. So if anybody wants to do a podcast, it's
Well, it's such a great way to educate the public, but then also, I mean, I'm sure a lot of mental health professionals and counselors and psychologists listen to them as well, so to educate them too.
Yeah. Based on the feedback I've had, it's kind of it's a decent mix from what I can tell. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's great.
I suppose that's reasonable. Well, in preparation for this interview, I've been spending the last half hour looking through my DSM-5 and learning all about pathology and what's wrong with us, and so that's what we're talking about today, right?
Exactly.
Well, no, you. I mean, people don't know. I kind of know, but you. Now I'm going to pronounce it wrong. It's VIA, right? VIA Institute.
Correct. Yeah.
Character, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to say VIA because it's VIA, and the website's viacharacter.org, right? For the VIA stuff.
Correct.
And you work on character strengths and positive psychology. You've got books like Positive Psychology at the Movies. It's sort of like how to build character strengths and promote well-being, focusing less on the what's wrong with us and more on the strength side of things, right? And that's why I like May. It's like I like the DSM-5 came out, which is all the horrible disorders that are wrong with us, and yet we've got you on here to talk about strengths. I think that's good.
I'm here to balance everything out.
Exactly.
Yeah, we originally did a book called Movies and Mental Illness, my colleagues and I, and so that the latest version of that came out in 2010, and so that's where we looked at all the DSM-4 diagnoses, like all of them, and what are the best movies to portray those disorders, and which movies might be perpetrating a misconception, or for the public, or kind of perpetrating the mental illness in more of a negative way, not an accurate way. And so we tried to use that as kind of a way to educate professionals and consumers about that, and using something that everyone loves, which is movies. And then and I just really felt an urge, since I was always drawn to things like positive psychology and spirituality and things like that, to really put together a book that looks at what's going right with people. And then when the book Character Strengths and Virtues came out, which is this full classification of strengths and virtues, that then sort of became the framework for being able to write what you were mentioning, Todd, Positive Psychology at the Movies. And so the new edition of that book comes out in about a month. So it comes out in June of 2013 here.
That looks good. And when was the first one? Because it was a couple of years ago. I'm
2008
yeah,
was
okay.
And then that did well enough in terms of the field of psychology and positive psychology, and so the publisher was really eager to put out a new edition. So the new edition does a lot of different things. It expands the research on each of the character strengths, the latest science on curiosity and creativity and love and kindness, gratitude, hope, teamwork, that kind of thing, and gets into more practices for working with those strengths, and then it expands the scope in terms of looking at movies not only with those that portray those strengths, but also movies that portray other areas of positive psychology. So a positive achievement, or positive relationships, or engagement and meaning, and other areas that positive psychology researchers study. And so then we had to look for movies that we thought were best that portrayed those. So it's been a lot of fun. Both these books. I mean, to be able to write books on movies and spend time doing that. A lot of it's on the side, but to be able to do that is a lot of fun.
Right. So, how do you see people maybe using it? I mean, do they maybe just think about the movie and think about the strengths, or would they be kind of just go back and watch the movie from the perspective of what they read in your book? With the different strengths. How do you see it? How do you see it being used?
Yeah, people use it kind of in a lot of different ways. I mean, one way is they might be wanting to learn more about the strength of curiosity or the strength of fairness or the strength of honesty. And so they're like, well, what would be some good movie portrayals that, so what we call exemplars that portray, those strengths. And so then kind of watching those movies and really watching the movies with that lens in mind. Like I'm looking for strengths, or I'm looking for a particular strength in that character, and how does that strength play out, and what are the dynamics of that strength as it emerges for that character, and what was that character's family like, and what does that character think like, and and how do they use that strength to overcome difficulties. And so really people once they put on those strength goggles, or that strength lens, to be able to look at a character that way, they end up getting lots of insights, and it's really fascinating. So that's one way to use it. When it comes to teachers or psychologists that use the book, that they might use it to recommend certain movies for clients as homework. Teachers often will show clips or entire movies in class, and they might use the book in some of the discussion questions and things like that. So kind of lots of different ways. And it's kind of just a fun book. It's kind of a reference book, because we have in this latest edition, I think it's over 1,500 or nearly 1,500 movies that portray the strengths, the 24 strengths. So yeah, it's fun stuff.
It's interesting, and I'm going to divulge something. I was just on VIA's website. I was there at lunch, so I was a little bit hungry, but I took the VIA Me. There's the survey there's a free survey on your website. I don't know, viacharacter.org. There's probably another website to go to for it too. Maybe it's
either viame.org, viame.org, or viacharacter.org, and then people can take the free VIA survey of strengths. So you took the survey.
I took it. I mean, do you want to tell people a little bit about it first, because you probably do a better job than I can.
Yeah. Well, it depends kind of how much you want me to go into in terms of the context.
It's your call. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I don't have an agenda.
Okay. Well, just to give a little bit of context to the VIA survey, and this because we're throwing around the phrase the 24 strengths and character strengths, so just so that people are on the same page. So this work is found in the field of psychology and in the domain of positive psychology specifically, and it came out of one of the American Psychological Association's presidential missions. So in the late 1990s, when Martin Seligman was the president of APA, each APA president has a particular mission, and one of his missions was to bring forth a more positive psychology, and to try to bring the field to be able to look more at what's going right with people. And this was really important because psychology has always done such a great job at looking at what's wrong with people and helping people. So psychology has done a great job at looking at pathology and helping people with addictions and helping people with mood disorders and anxiety disorders and childhood disorders and on and on. And we've, as psychologists, come up with many different treatments and done tons of research. However, the field has not done as good of a job at the science behind what's going right with people. So what is the research on a positive organization or a virtuous organization, or the research on happiness, and what really is the science of happiness, and the research of our character and character strengths that human beings have? And so there hadn't been as much work on that. In fact, one researcher noted a ratio of, I believe it's 21-1 in terms of studies that looked at negative emotions to positive emotions, and this was done through the year 2000 or 2001, so before positive psychology kind of took hold. So 21-1. So that just is such a huge imbalance in terms of not looking at this other part of what's of human beings. We're missing so much, and so that was kind of Seligman's really big push, was just to bring forth more research, not to replace the other stuff, but to complement it. and to expand upon it, and to see how the two can interact together. So that's kind of what the call was, and since then we could go on and on about how different scientific journals have emerged at major organizations, millions and millions of dollars in grant funding for positive psychology stuff, new research camps around the world, and how things are sort of coming together almost like positive psychology is almost like an umbrella term. If you get a textbook on positive psychology, there's usually about 60 chapters, and each one is another whole scientific domain. So like there's a chapter on empathy, and a chapter on hope, and a chapter on resilience, and a chapter on positive relationships. And so each one of these looks at the science. So positive psychology becomes sort of an umbrella of those 60 areas, or I'm just making up that word, it could be many more than that. So that was, and so a big part of positive psychology was the study of character. That was one of the three main areas that Seligman suggested that researchers study. And Neil Mayerson, who's actually my boss and is the chairman of the VIA Institute on Character, he connected with Marty at the time, and they had never met each other. And Neil was interested in this work and even providing funding for the work around positive character, and Marty was interested in moving forward the science of this. And so they got together various leaders in the areas in the United States, and to discuss how can we move forward with this work and with the study of character. And what these researchers came to this conclusion, kind of almost unanimously, they said, well, we don't really have a common language, or the technical phrase is a consensual nomenclature, to be able to talk about this stuff. What really is character, and what are these character strengths or virtues in us? Different people have said different things. We have no common language to even talk about this stuff. So that's when then the researchers then decide, okay, well, we need to look at what have people said throughout time, throughout history, in terms of describing what's best in people. And so the person that then led this team of 55 scientists, was a man named Chris Peterson, who sadly just passed away at the end of last year. He's a researcher at the University of Michigan and kind of an award-winning professor and scholar. And he led this team of 55 scientists looking at all of the best thinking throughout time, throughout history, on virtue, on strength. They wanted to kind of look at what has anybody said about strength or virtue or good qualities in people throughout time. So they looked to Aristotle, and they looked to people like Benjamin Franklin, who had a typology of virtue. They looked to even organizations like the Boy Scouts have a little virtue of classification that they go by. All the world religions have their own take on virtue and strength and that kind of thing. And what these researchers found across cultures, across all of these texts, dating back again 2,500 years to Buddhism, what they found is this incredible universality. That there were 6 major themes across all of these works, for the most part, and those 6 themes were wisdom, courage, humanity, justice, temperance, and transcendence. And so those actually then became the virtues of the VIA classification that we're talking about here, and then the 24 strengths. There was particular criteria and other analyses used to look at what strengths would nest underneath each of those 6 virtues, and that's where the 24 character strengths came in. So, strengths like creativity and curiosity are under the wisdom domain, and strengths like spirituality and gratitude and hope are under the transcendence domain, and strengths like humility and self-regulation and prudence are under the temperance domain, and on through the 24. So the scientists, then they had created this VIA classification that was cross-cultural, so it wasn't just like some American system. It's a human system. Then they said, well, any new science, this is a new science of character that's coming about here, and any new science that then has a classification needs a measurement tool to measure what's being classified. So that's then when they went about the work of creating the VIA survey that you just took, Todd, and of course they, the VIA Institute is a nonprofit scientific organization here in Cincinnati, Ohio, and VIA, being a scientific organization, isn't going to put out a non-validated instrument. So they did the appropriate psychometrics testing and found the VIA survey to have good reliability and validity. And so then it's been offered to the world for free since 2003. And since then, so in that 10 years, it's kind of amazing what has spurred that. Over 2 million people have taken it. Every single country around the world have had people take the VIA survey. Researchers from literally around the world use the VIA survey in their research, like with their employees and with the clients in their clinic and with their students. Professors use it in their classroom. So it's quite amazing. And kind of my job as the education director of VIA is to really kind of monitor what's going on, to see what's going on, and to try to teach people about what's going on. So what's going on in terms of the latest research on character strengths and on the strength of curiosity or the strength of gratitude and so forth, and then to be able to teach people about that. Since we're a nonprofit, one of our main missions is to teach people, the public and professionals, about how to get in touch with your character strengths, how to use them more, how to use them to deal with problems, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of a little bit of a long-winded response, Todd, but I'm glad that you allowed me to give it, because it allows me to give a little bit more of a substantive background to the VIA classification, and then also like where did this VIA survey that you took, where did that come about? And now the survey that you took was probably 120 questions, which we were able to validate it at 120. We just all the way up until a couple months ago, it was actually twice as long. So you're able to probably finish it in 10 or 15 minutes rather than 20 to 30 that it might have taken before that.
So the MMPI is 567, right? So that's
right.
Looking at like some of the pathological stuff, right? So it's
right. Yeah.
So it's much better than that. Anyway, I'm looking positively.
That's right, yeah. So what were if you wanted to disclose, what were you...
I'm happy to disclose.
Yeah, your highest strengths.
Because these are strengths. All of them, you know what I mean? You can't get a bad, right? There's 24, and they're all positive things. You can't get a bad result, right?
That's why it's great. Like people that work with individuals with depression or anxiety, they get a listing of character strengths, and it's a rank order from 1 to 24 that people get, and you can only get a positive result because this test just measures strength. So what we always tell people is that the ones that come toward the bottom are not necessarily weaknesses, because the test doesn't actually assess for weaknesses. And so what it's showing is that there's some strengths that we perceive ourselves to be higher in, and some we see ourselves as lower in. So we have lesser strengths, and then those that come toward the top are potentially what we call signature strengths. And I could say more about some of the really, really awesome research on signature strengths later. But so yeah, I'd be curious, like what came up toward the top for you, like in terms of potentially a signature strength.
Well, before I reveal that, I'll say thank you for mentioning the bottom part, because and I'm a psychologist as well, but I have that different orientation. So like I glanced at the beginning, and then I quickly flipped to the end, and I'm like, what's at my bottom?
You and every other person did that. Everybody does. You and 2 million some people have done that. Yeah, it's a natural human tendency. I mean, I did it too. We always want to look at what maybe could we grow in, or what might be a deficit, even though it's not measuring deficits. But that's kind of the way our mind works, to think that way.
Right. So I had at the top I had kindness, bravery, humor, love of learning. I don't know how far should I go on that.
Yeah. I mean. Yeah, the number of signature strengths, varies by each individual. Researchers use kind of tend to look just at the top 5. We know in reality when working with somebody in a therapy session or a counseling session that, people tend to have more than 5 signature strengths. But so it does come down to, what do you kind of resonate with in the top 5? Do you see yourself as those being core to who you are? Because that's what a signature strength is it's who we are at our most core, at our essence. It's that strength, those strengths that are most energizing to use when we really think about it, and they're simple to use because we're already, it's just part of who we are. It's just like an extension. It's like our arm being extended out. So. Well, and I can already kind of name just what you're doing here, Todd, with interviewing various people, and just kind of and a lot of it's spontaneous. That takes a lot of bravery, and so that doesn't surprise me that bravery and courage would be your number 2 strength. Your demeanor. Todd and I have known each other for many years, and from back in graduate school, over a decade ago, and I definitely would have thought kindness for because Todd's demeanor is very kind and nice and compassionate, altruistic, that kind of thing. So that kind of fits too.
And I only allowed nice people on the podcast You are, Ryan, it's like the whole complimenting session now, but you are probably one of the nicer people I've ever met. You know what I mean? The backstory there with grad school is Ryan was volunteered to be my orientation mentor even. So he was he was very giving of his time. And so I think that's definitely continues. So
that's right. And so you sounds like you do resonate with those strengths then?
I would guess, in terms of bravery, in terms, picking up the phone can be difficult, but it's obviously, I kind of try to back away from that a little bit, but I probably shouldn't. But.
Yeah. But it sounds like you do take that where a lot of people wouldn't take the action to do a podcast and to interview people and that, and so it could be one example. But it's interesting to kind of look at the different areas of our life. We can look at our personal life, or family life, or social life, and kind of see where these strengths come about and where we're using them, or where we're not using them enough, maybe.
Sure. And that's I'll flip over to the focus on the negative again.
Sure.
I'll say that, well, you could also say that self-regulation is apparently my 24th. So it's like, well, you know what? I just can't control myself. I'm like, if I want to talk to someone, I'll be like, you know what? I want to learn about that. And I don't think, hey, you know what? I probably shouldn't impulsively have people come on a podcast or something like that. But
yeah.
Or maybe I'm just being humorous right now, which was also near the top. I don't know.
That's up there too. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and your love of learning. Love of learning came up number 5 for you, and you are including a wide variety of topics in these podcasts, and really opening it to almost anybody to be interviewed, or not almost anybody, but like people, a lot of
as long as they're nice.
Backgrounds. Yeah, as long as they're kind too, to match your signature strength. Yeah.
Well, it's because I think early on I was kind of like saying, oh, and this person was a really nice person, and oh, this person was a really nice person. It's probably, if somebody were to listen through all of them, then I think that comes up a lot. But
that's interesting.
You are, of course, the nicest so far. We'll say
that's good. I would have that number 1 ranking.
But I also I don't want to get too sidetracked because I'd like to talk. We kind of talked a little bit about how people can use these, but I know. I think I read a blog post of yours, and it was a little while ago, so I didn't get a chance to really reread it. But it sort of talked a little bit about maybe ways people could, take their strengths and try to use them. I think it was like using them every day, or trying using them in a different ways, and do you have any tips like in terms of once people kind of take the via me? I mean, where can they go after that to sort of?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, it's a good perceptive question by you because that is the question that people ask the most. Is like they're like, okay, I took the VIA survey. Now what do I do? Yeah, it's interesting that I have this list of 24 strengths, and some are higher in me and some are lower in me. What am I supposed to do? So we've been getting that question, obviously from people around the world for many years, and so really that's kind of been my main job and people at VIA's main job, which is to try to answer that question in lots of different ways. We try to answer that question by offering online workshops and more detailed reports that people can get, and free stuff on our site in terms of like research summaries and practices and stories with the strengths. So we've been focused a lot on trying to keep answering that what we call the now what question. But I could certainly give some tips right now. Yeah, there's many, but the two big ones that first come to my mind. One is I like to think of applying a particular strengths model. Not only if you're a practitioner working with someone with their strengths, but also for that individual and how that client can think about their strengths. And it's a very simple model, but I think it's useful. And it's basically three steps. It's aware, explore, apply. So the client or the counselor only has to remember those 3 words: aware, explore, apply. And so what that means is the first, we are cultivating more awareness of our character strengths, something that we often don't pay much attention to at all. We're mostly unconscious about what's best in us. And survey research shows that only 1/3 of people have any kind of meaningful awareness of their strengths. And so there's a whole lot of strength blindness and a lack of being tuned into ourselves. So that first phase of awareness is so important, and that's where, after the person takes the VIA survey, that starts to answer the awareness piece. They're building a little bit more awareness of their strengths, and then after we gain more awareness, then the next phase is explore, and so that's where we spend time digging into the strength, and we kind of look at, okay, how is this true about me? And times when I've really been at my best, or I've really been in the zone, in flow, as some people say, what strengths was I using then? Or when I overcame that difficult life problem, or the argument with my wife, or the dealing with my child who was struggling a little bit, or my boss who yelled at me, how did I get over that? What strengths did I use? What strengths do I want to use in the future? So we explore this stuff in many different ways. When have I used my humor? At times when it's gotten me in trouble, and at times when I've been really successful with the humor. When have I used my bravery and kindness and gratitude and et cetera? So that's where if the person's a helping professional, they can help the client and spend even many sessions, actually, just exploring and digging in and helping the person to just gain a deeper knowledge of who they are, and it's creating kind of completely new pathways in their brain in terms of positivity and what's strong about them, and really they're really part of their personality, part of their positive identity. And then after that explore phase, then the idea is to apply. So now that I've explored this and I've thought about it, I've discussed it with people, now let me take action is what the apply stage is. And so that's where maybe I'll set a goal in relation to one of the strengths, where I'm going to set a goal to connect more with one of my strengths more, use one of my strengths more in my relationship, etc. So that's just a helpful tip, aware, explore, apply, that not only a therapist could use, but also the therapist could hand that to the client and say, okay, this is how I would suggest you work with your strengths. I'm going to build some awareness, then explore it, now set a goal and apply. So that's kind of all one sort of tip. And then a second tip that's based squarely on research studies in this area, so published in well-known scholarly journals, is this idea of signature strengths that I kind of promised to get back to too. And signature strengths are often those strengths that come up highest in our profile. They tend to be in one's top 5, 6, or 7. And also the strengths that are most core to who the person is. That's really the most important quality of a signature strength, that it's core to the person, core to who they are, and it feels like the real them, like the real you. So authentic might be the word. And then other descriptions of signature strengths are that they're energizing. So when you're using your kindness or using your love or love of learning and kind of digging into new knowledge and exploring new topics, that's energizing, to a degree at least. It's uplifting. And signature strengths are easy to do. You don't really have to think about, how am I going to use my love of learning strength here? You just know how to do it sort of intuitively. So that's the way signature strengths tend to play out. So what's been found in the research then about signature strengths is this idea of choosing one of the signature strengths and then using it in a new way each day. So if I maybe use myself as an example, one of my highest strengths is curiosity. So and that basically means I like to ask lots of questions. I like to pursue things that are new and different. So I kind of like novelty. I like trying new things, new experiences, new travel, new people. New. Because I'm always very curious, asking lots of questions and exploring, explore. And so to do this intervention or this practical tip, let's say I just choose that strength of mine, curiosity, and now my task is to use it in one new way each day. Now I'm probably already using it in a lot of ways during the day, and that I could explore and think about. But what's one new way that I could use it today? And so I say, okay, well today I'm going to talk to a colleague and ask them a couple questions. Okay, and then tomorrow I'm going to use my curiosity I'm going to take a new way home, and I'm going to drive through a different neighborhood and kind of just explore it. Then the next day I'm going to go to a new restaurant with my wife and try a new food. And the next day, and so forth. So what's happening then is I'm taking something that's core to who I am and expanding it, and I'm kind of like allowing it to, I'm kind of fleshing it out. I'm bringing it forth more to the world. So what happens then is kind of obvious, but what happens is it elevates my happiness. And research studies have shown, actually, and these are studies that have been replicated in different cultures, is that individuals that do this assignment of using one of their signature strengths in a new way each day, usually the studies say do it just for a week, maybe 2 weeks at the most. What happens is those individuals have a benefit to their happiness and depression for 6 months. That it gives elevations in happiness for 6 months and decreases in depression for 6 months compared to a control group. So it's such a simple little thing that's easy and fun to do, and that has these good scientific benefits.
And that's, I guess I have two things. Like one thing I really like about it is that when people are sad and stressed, and we usually, we focus a lot on the negative stuff. Like I think I've brought that up multiple times probably already. We tend to focus on the negative things about ourselves and feel, like we're not very competent. And so I think, focusing on strengths and trying to see them in ourselves and look at the more positive is probably beneficial in itself. But then, you brought up these exercises. It seems like positive psychology is. There's been a lot of like different exercises that have come out of it that have shown to kind of boost people's mood quickly. You know what I mean? So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's pretty exciting about it, and it's so easy to integrate in. So like speaking to those that are counselors listening, I mean, that doesn't matter what your theoretical orientation is, if you're psychodynamic or CBT or humanistic or eclectic or whatever. This thing like the aware, explore, apply, or using signature strengths in new ways. I mean, it can fit with any model. It's not like it's a replacement model. So yeah, and of course, yeah, like you're alluding to, Todd, there's lots of other little practical tips that people, or exercises that have been shown to be helpful. I mean, like, for example, the strength of gratitude has gotten a surge of research in the last 10 years that really there's almost like nothing written about gratitude unless you look to the spiritual writers. There's no science of gratitude really until around the late 1990s and especially more in the 2000s. And there's great benefits to well-being or happiness for those that count their blessings. That and that exercise simply is at the end of the day to write down 3 good things that have happened to you and why you think they happened to you. And that's it. So you might have like a little journal at the side of your bed, and you spend 5 minutes, maybe, whatever it takes, to write down the 3 good things. And you do that each day. And I always suggest to clients and to students that they change those up each day, so to never repeat the same ones, and maybe even consider doing this for like 6 months. And so after 6 months, you have hundreds and hundreds of things that suddenly you realize you were grateful for that happened to you. And it could be something as small as, I'm grateful that someone held the door for me. I was carrying a bunch of books, and and that helped me a little bit. And so I'm grateful for that. And someone else might write, I was grateful that Joan smiled at me this morning, and that kind of gave me a little bit of a lift when I was feeling kind of a little bit off track in the morning. So it could be like real small things, or it could be something more grand that the person's grateful for. They got good medical test results. Is obviously maybe like a really huge thing to be grateful for. So the big and the small, and suddenly what you're doing is you're really cultivating that strength of gratitude. You're making it more a part of you, even if it's a signature strength or not. Doesn't matter either way. You're cultivating that in yourself, and then you're going to be looking for it more. You're more likely to take a look at the world more from grateful eyes. So lots of kind of different fun exercises like that people can do. I just find that people are more receptive to this kind of work, these kind of interventions, just because they're more toward the positive, and they're not threatening, and yet they're still substantive. They still can be challenging, and people tend to kind of gravitate a little bit more to them.
Well, since we kind of started talking a little bit about counseling and counselors, there was something, I don't want to take all your time forever, of course, but I also wanted to mention that you have another book coming out, don't you? It's
That's right.
The Mindfulness and Character Strengths.
That's right. Mindfulness and Character Strengths.
And it's maybe a little bit based on mindfulness-based strengths practice. I don't know much about that. Maybe you could, particularly since there's probably mental health professionals or even people who maybe are looking for somebody who might be kind of practicing in this area a little bit. Can you kind of tell us a little bit more about what that is? Or
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Certainly, mindfulness is a topic that even more people will have a resonance with listening than the character strengths, because mindfulness has skyrocketed even more than the character strengths research has skyrocketed. So it's like two big skyscrapers, and the mindfulness one is like 5 times as high, but they're both way up there in terms of what's been happening lately in the field of psychology and positive psychology. And I've had a long-standing interest in mindfulness, even dating back to grad school, and have spent a lot of time practicing with mindfulness personally and leading hundreds of mindfulness groups for various different populations. And when I developed the knowledge on the character strengths work, I saw sort of a nice marriage between the two. There had already been a lot of different mindfulness-based programs out there, but they tended to always be based on helping a person to recover from something. So there's mindfulness-based stress reduction, which has been shown in many, many research studies to be helpful for people in managing stress and chronic pain, coping with medical conditions. There's mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, which is a wonderful treatment and really the treatment of choice for people with recurrent depression, 3 episodes or more. And then there's mindfulness-based eating awareness training, which is for people with bulimia and even more so for people that have binge eating problems. And then there's, and on, all these mindfulness-based programs. And while all of them probably can boost well-being and happiness, none of them that I could tell, for the most part, don't explicitly focus on what's right within us, or explicitly lasering in that mindfulness onto what's right rather than onto the stress management or pain management. And so that's where it was a nice kind of marriage. Because mindfulness has also already been shown that mindfulness helps us to see more clearly who we are. There's research that just came out this year showing that it helps us to make a more clear, honest look at ourselves. And so, and who are we really? But who we are at our core is our character strengths. So what I do in the book then is I review all the latest research and practices on mindfulness, all the research and practices on character strengths. So it's a little 1-chapter primer on each of those. Then I talk about the integration, because that's something that I was kind of surprised, but nobody has put them together before in terms of, people have talked about mindfulness and some of the strengths, but never these 24 character strengths and mindfulness. So I talk about the research of integrating the two and how mindfulness benefits strengths and how strengths benefit mindfulness. And then the latter half of the book is specifically what you were mentioning, Todd, a program called Mindfulness-Based Strengths Practice, MBSP. And so that's an 8-week program that I created that integrates these two. And in the book, basically, I outline step-by-step of a program that people can follow to boost mindfulness and strengths in their life. So it includes 30 handouts and step-by-step things of how the process and the format for each group and that kind of thing. I talk about adaptations to different settings, like how would you adapt this to the business setting or the education setting, and working with couples, working with individuals, things like that. So that's been another major sort of labor of love for me, and real happy and excited about that book and to see people's reaction to it.
That definitely sounds interesting, and it's I think I want to say better perspective. That would be kind of judgmental of me, but I like the way it goes compared to a lot of the other stuff that you see, at least in our field. You know what I mean? So I'll be very interested to look at it. So
that's great. Yeah, I'll be curious to hear what you think. There goes my curiosity again. I'll be curious to hear what you think.
Well, I'll be kind to you with it. I wouldn't say anything bad because it would go with my kindness.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. Sorry. Maybe that was the humor. I don't know. I'll work on it.
Yeah.
But I don't want to steal all your time, so maybe if there's anything else we haven't covered or anything you want to talk about, now is your chance to kind of just put it out there. Anything you think maybe people should know that maybe we didn't get too much.
One thing I would note is, in terms of just kind of character strengths education, is the importance of all 24 of the strengths, and that all 24 of them matter. They're all important. So that's kind of one of the principles I try to always kind of get across to people, is that we use all 24 of these strengths, and they're all just part of who, our humanness as human beings, and they're ways that we can really connect with people and to really even make the world a better place. So they all matter. And it might be that our signature strengths matter the most because it's most who we are, and it's how we can really be even that much more successful or connected with other people because it's those strengths that are highest in us. And one way to, or another way to really kind of maximize the connection with other people and to kind of move the work forward for each person as an individual is to practice what we call strength spotting, and to practice looking for the strengths in other people. And so when we spot a particular strength, to be able to kind of name that, and hey, I'm really seeing you use your hope strength in the way at that last meeting, and you kind of came across very optimistic and positive, and you seem to really change the tenor of the meeting when you're using that strength of yours. I really appreciate that. So to be able to give that kind of feedback to people about their strengths is, again, it's another shift. It's it could even almost call it a paradigm shift. It changes people's way of thinking. So just the simple act of spotting strengths can make a big difference, and it's the kind of work that it goes on forever. Like we never would like, okay, well, I spotted my wife's strength or my friend's strength, and that's kind of it. I'm ready to move on. It's something that we would keep doing forever because of the benefits it brings to ourselves and to other people, and I think it just really, quite frankly, helps out the world as well. So maybe that's kind of a nice thing to kind of conclude on for people. A nice good message there.
Well, thank you for doing the podcast. Where should people go are there websites and stuff that they should go to find out more about you and your books and VIA and?
Sure. Yeah. Well, a couple different things. I have a new site. Since I work for a nonprofit, I'm not able to put the books on the nonprofit site. So if they're interested in the books, well, you could just do you could simply just go to Amazon and type in either Positive Psychology at the Movies 2, or Mindfulness and Character Strengths, or if you're interested in the mental illness book, Movies and Mental Illness. So you could just type in any of those on Amazon. But I am creating a site that should be up very soon, certainly by June, called RyanNiemiec.com. And I'll spell my name. It's just RYAN and then another N, IEMIEC. So that's a way to learn more about the books and just some of the topics we've been talking about. I'll have educational things on there. And then finally, I welcome people to email me too, and my email address is simply ryan@viacharacter.org. So it's ryan@viacharacter.org. And then, of course, if you want to learn more about the VIA Institute, the VIA classification, take the VIA survey, then you should go to viacharacter.org, or to take the survey viame.org. So yeah, thank you very much for having me, Todd. It's been fun as always connecting with you.
Absolutely, and I'll put links to that on the podcast site too, so people can just kind of click on them, so it'll be a little easier.
Visit the podcast at www.mentalhealthday.org.
Malfunction.